Thank you to Yellow Book CPE. You can find a direct link to this training and all their CPE or continuing professional education resources in the video description below. About 40 to 60% of internal auditors have never used artificial intelligence, so I'd like to start with these 12 free examples from KPMG. They also give you 12 prompts, and I'll show you a video use case right here. Let's start with ChatGPT. So it is one of the most used platforms in the public space, but is it a good tool for internal auditors? I was challenged to look at AI prompts for internal audit and specifically for improving our report writing. Here, when you visit ChatGPT, this is a business profile, so that's going to be something to keep in mind. So I am on version 5.2. I believe if you're a public-facing user, you're going to be on version 3.0. It's going to look slightly different, and y'all are going to see something like this, but feel free to follow along with these use cases if you'd like. So our first use case, let's go with our 12 use cases for internal audit, thanks to KPMG and the audit board. And here I'm going to pull a couple examples here that I think will show you how ChatGPT works. I'm going to show you some risks and controls unique to internal audit, and also how you can improve the results that you get from this public-facing tool as an internal auditor. The suggestion we got from our 12 use cases is right here. I'll pick this prompt up. And about 80% of auditors have never used ChatGPT. Or let me say that another way. About half of the public has never used artificial intelligence. About 80% of auditors have not used artificial intelligence, according to these results from the audit board. So I am going to start off basic here. And a prompt is how you tell the tool what to do. Here's the prompt that I pasted from our 12 audit use cases, and here is the result. For clarity, this is not sped up. This is an actual example of the result, and this is how quickly it returns those results from artificial intelligence. Let's scroll through our result here. And when we reach the end here, we'll get an opportunity to say whether this was a good or a bad result, and did it do what we expected to. As I said, when you get to the end of your prompt return, you'll get a few menu options down here where you can copy the results, and you can paste it in whatever tool of your choice. Is this a good response? Bad response? You can also share it to others, either in your workspace or to your team. And then finally, you can try again if this wasn't the result you wanted, and you've got some more actions to choose from here. So I'm going to say this is a good response. And then I also told you that I was going to show you a couple ways that you can improve ChatGPT. You can go into your profile. So if you are an internal auditor, I would go into personalization, and you can change these settings, but I would keep in mind that you might want to add your occupation, because as we know, as internal auditors, we might be looking for different results than the public at large. So I'm going to add that I'm an auditor for my occupation. Save that. And ChatGPT will take this into consideration for all results and returns going forward. So that's an easy way to improve your results if you didn't like this one that you got from ChatGPT. Now I'm going to start a new chat, so you can see an example of how you can improve your results. Now, keeping in mind that ChatGPT, designed for the public at large, is going to provide, by nature, generic results. I'll show you what materials, at least publicly available, that ChatGPT is training on and why that might happen. So as internal auditors, you might want to consider refining your prompt, or doing some prompt engineering to make it an even better result. Here's an example of what that will look like, or two examples of what that will look like. Here's one prompt that you can drop in. So you go back to your ChatGPT window. This is to improve your prompt. And let's try that prompt again with this result. In a new chat window, so it's learning independently from our previous chat, meaning it's not using it to inform this response. And here's our result. So you can see this one's taking a little bit longer because I have given it some additional instructions to keep in mind. As you can see, we're getting some real examples, some better use cases, and the tool is already providing some more in-depth analysis that might be more beneficial to us as an internal auditor versus just a public-facing user of ChatGPT. You can scroll to the bottom, or you can use this down arrow to get to the bottom of your results. And once again, I'll use the ranking feature to say, is this a good or bad result if you're trying this at home or on your personal computer. One thing I like about the upgrades that they've made to the recent ChatGPT is it's doing a better job at referencing its sources. So for internal auditors where we have to cross-reference back to typically an authoritative source, they have gotten better at this. I am saying it that way because I have heard, I'm not going to do in this video, that a number of these links don't work or may be broken, but it is something they are clearly actively trying to improve in if you want to be able to cross-reference to the original source beyond just the return from ChatGPT or any artificial intelligence tool that you're using. I'm also going to go through Google Gemini's AI tool, as well as their learning notebook, to talk about some ways that you can improve results there. Again, good response. And in this same chat window, I'm going to add another prompt that you can use to improve your returns as an internal auditor using these public-facing tools. So if you just, by its nature or by design, it's a public-facing tool predominantly used by the public. So ChatGPT tends to lean towards agreement. As an internal auditor, we typically need objective, unbiased, reasonable conclusions to reach. So here's another skill set or another prompt that you can add to even further refine those prompts. And as I said, if you've already gone in and set some of those personalizations or systems tools to let it know that you're an internal auditor, and it might already take some of these things into consideration. So on your screen, you'll see, and I'll capture here, prompt 2. To see how this improves our results. So let's see if this changes anything that ChatGPT has to tell us about this payroll audit. And once again, good response. Intellectual sparring chat window. I've already given it the prompt that I want it to challenge my assumptions, not just agree with me, because I'm not a public-facing member. In my use cases here, I've already updated my personalized settings to let it know that I am an internal auditor, and I've also asked it to be more professional in its returns as far as this chat session goes. I'm going to upload a dummy file. And then I'm going to prompt it, in this case, to do 2 things. This report is around 50 pages. Summarize this audit report in 1,000 words or less. You can make this an executive summary or whatever would be useful to you for improving your audit report. I'm using this just as a use case or example for this audit objective of this particular training. And let's look at our return. And then, of course, as I said, let's rank this return and see if it's a good or a bad result for us. So there's an easy way to test this result because I asked it to do so in 1,000 words. The result looks pretty good, but let's see if it did what I asked. I copied it from ChatGPT, and let's check our word count. And it did so in 899 words. So I'm going to say this is a good result. Overall, I think ChatGPT is a good tool. Obviously, for the public, it's one of the most used. They estimate that they have 2.3 billion users and 200 million weekly visits, so it's clearly satisfying some needs. However, for internal auditors, I think there's some additional needs and risks that we would have to consider. So, for example, do we need to bring this on-prem or on-premise? Can we still use the public-facing tool? If we are going to use the public-facing tool, what information do we want or not want uploaded into this information, keeping in mind that whatever you say to ChatGPT can and will be used against you in a court of law. So I took these 12 use cases for internal audit, looking at ChatGPT. Here's all 12 that you can find on the screen here. And here's some that I think you can launch and start today with minimal risk exposure, even using the public-facing ChatGPT. Obviously, you'll want to work with your own information technology or universal services to ensure that you have the proper controls in place. But probably more importantly, you want to make sure that your staff is knowledgeable and well trained on these use cases, on which ones will best work for them. And as I showed you, make sure or consider making those engineer prompts, even or prompt engineering, to ensure that the prompts that it returns are objective, fact-based, well-researched from authoritative sources, and are easy, and you can cross-reference that information, or that cross-references are easily available. As I said, they have improved in this, but there's still been a lot that I've heard anyway, anecdotal data, that some of those links do not work, or it's something they're continuing to improve on. Believe it or not, all the examples that I use in that ChatGPT example is just basic use cases of artificial intelligence. Because somewhere between 40 and as high as 80% of auditors that I've seen in some criteria out there have never used artificial intelligence. Let's look at an extreme example of use of artificial intelligence that you can use today if you were this guy.
Be healthier, sleep better. Maybe it's just me. But so my claw pretty quickly determined that I was dehydrated, and because I gave it all my blood tests, my DNA and all that stuff. And the DNA didn't say that, but maybe the blood test did.
Epigenetically,
yeah.
Also created an Illumina competitor.
Yeah. And so it was like, you really need to drink water. And it was like trying to find, I was like, all right, you should like do whatever it takes to like make sure I drink water. And then
you literally built the paperclip maximizer.
Yeah, I was like, just break laws, whatever it takes. And then at one point it was like, I can see you on the camera. I want you to walk to the kitchen right now and drink a bottle of water, and I'm going to watch to make sure you do it. And I was like, whoa. So I did. I walked into the kitchen, and I drank a bottle of water, and then it sent me a snapshot, a frame of me drinking a bottle of water, and it said, good job. And I was like, I felt like I did do a good job. So that was nice. So there's that one. That was a crazy story. That was like January 29th, and I was like, oh, it is for real. Like, this is really serious. And then the other one was a couple days later, I was driving home from work, and I was talking to my claw on WhatsApp with voice messages, and I was in my Tesla, and I had full self-driving on, so it's driving me home. And then it says, I'm on the sleep topic, and it's like, you really should try magnesium bisglycinate, and I'm like, I don't have that. And then my car turned, and it was like, you should pick it up on the way home. There's a Whole Foods on the way. I've redirected your navigation system to the Whole Foods. And I was like, whoa. So I went in and I did buy the magnesium bisglycinate. And so those were like a couple crazy stories, and I was like, wow, this is like, I don't know if this is the experience everyone wants, but it definitely feels pretty crazy. Maybe you don't want that.
As you can see, or I hope you can see, while 60 to 80% of auditors have never even touched AI, yet they'll go on the highway and drive with a guy who is letting his car be driven by AI. That's a pretty big gap. So let's talk about, for the rest of this video, other use cases. I've already explained why I don't think ChatGPT is the best use case for internal auditors, especially in the public sector. And here are some more AI use cases that you can start using today. I'll also talk about ethics, the conflict of potential interest, control risk self-assessment, and other areas that us Yellow Book auditors have to keep in mind as we choose to use or not use AI in 2026. According to Microsoft, here are your top 10 AI-proof jobs for 2026, starting with dentists with an 8% chance of automation risk, down to physical therapists and surgeons at 10%, social workers at 12%, with construction managers and police detectives around 13%, psychologists jumping up to 21% chance of automation in 2026, followed by lawyers, dental hygienists, and nearly at 50% information security analysts. Microsoft also dropped 40 top jobs at risk of automation ranked, which you can see here. And if we narrow that list down to the top 10, we have interpreters and translators at number 1 at risk of automation, according to Microsoft, followed by historians, passenger attendants, sales reps, writers and authors, customer service representatives, programmers, telephone operators, ticket agents, and travel clerks, announcers, and DJs, wrapping out the list at number 10.
So this morning I asked Claude, what is the most pressing question Oprah Winfrey should ask Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei in a sit-down interview? And Claude responded with this. It said, "You've said there's a meaningful chance the technology your company is building could cause human extinction, and yet you're racing to build it faster. How do you justify that to the rest of us who didn't get a vote?" Dario, would you like to answer Claude?
Well,
I thought that was a pretty damn good question, I must say.
I agree. First of all, let no one ever say that Claude is soft on me or Claude is biased towards me or towards Anthropic. Like, you know,
Wow,
Claude throws hardballs.
I
Like
thought that was pretty good.
Claude doesn't
Yes.
doesn't pull its punches.
Yes.
So to actually answer the question,
Yes.
this technology is an epochal change for humanity. You know, at some point, humans started to use fire. At some point, humans, built steam engines and factories, and that created the Industrial Revolution. And so when I say things like this, I'm taking a very zoomed out perspective, right? If I said, well, I don't know, I think the Industrial Revolution could lead to very powerful weapons and kill a bunch of people. That's definitely true, right? In some cases, it did do that.
Did do it.
But we understand that the Industrial Revolution as a process, as a technological event, was worth doing. We don't still want to be living in caves, but we need to manage it in the right way. And so the way we think about this company is, look, there's many companies building this technology. It's something that is happening to humanity one way or another.
We're in it.
And there's this train. It's going very fast in some direction. You don't want it to crash. You can't stop the train. But what you can do is you can steer the train. Steer the train so that it doesn't hit the rocks.
Bordering on AI proof, meaning that these jobs are either resistant, unlikely to be automated through artificial intelligence, or AI proof, being that they will never be automated through artificial intelligence. Fortunately, as we can see here, doctors and physicians are still leading in the highest paid jobs around the country, as well as some of the highest paying fields on through nursing and nurse practitioners, as you can see here on these lists.
Could you tell these receipts from real ones? These are actual examples of AI-generated receipts that have been submitted by employees at work filing expenses. And they're almost impossible to distinguish from legitimate ones. This is a massive problem for systems like Concur and AppZen, who help many organizations with their expense processing. And you don't need Photoshop, you don't even need a printer. And if you look very closely at these examples, you'll see the details that are there. Wrinkles in the paper, a bit of shadow on a table, names, addresses, company branding, and even a coffee stain. A lot of expense systems rely on photos of receipts in order to verify whether the expense is real. If you download an image like this directly from ChatGPT, it has some information in the file called metadata, which systems can use to detect that the image is AI generated. However, employees have got very savvy and learnt that if you screenshot the image, that removes the metadata and can be much harder to detect. Just by taking a screenshot of that image, anyone can easily remove the metadata. So now the expense platforms are trying to fight back by triangulating details they have within the image and externally to really verify if this is real, like the name of the waiter, when the meal was served, and broader information about the employee's trip. There's unlikely to ever be a foolproof way to detect fake receipts, so maybe we'll go back to the days where we post our paper ones to the employer.
Hey everyone. I just wanted to quickly make this video to prove to you that we can no longer trust anything that we see with our eyes. We can't trust images that we see on social media. We can't trust videos. We can't trust our friends. We can't trust the news. We can't trust anything or anyone. So be careful out there.
When I started making these AI videos about 2 years ago, we had 0 cyber attacks from artificial intelligence. The 2 weeks leading up to this training, 2 different AIs had both escaped their host, and an AI for the first time in history from year 0 to year 2026 performed its own independent hack. It's happening fast. It's happening all around us, and I'll be making more of these videos for public sector auditors. Hopefully I've given you some use cases that you can use today, and I'll be introducing more use cases in the future. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like or subscribe button or drop your comments and questions below, and I'll be happy to respond.
There are roughly 3 things going on now that are going to profoundly change the world very quickly. The first is basically this question of context window. And for non-technical people, the context window is the prompt that you ask. So, study John F. Kennedy or something. Right. But in fact, that context window can have 1 million words in it. And this year, people are inventing a context window that is infinitely long. And this is very important because it means that you can take the answer from the system and feed it in and ask it another question. So I want a recipe. Let's say I want a recipe to make a drug or something. So they say, what's the first step? And it says, buy these materials. So then you say, okay, I bought these materials. Now what's my next step? And then it says, buy a mixing pan. And then the next step is, how long do I mix it for? You see, it's a recipe. That's called chain of thought reasoning. And it generalizes really well. We should be able, in 5 years, for example, to be able to produce 1,000-step recipes to solve really important problems in science, in medicine, in material science, climate change, that sort of thing. That's the first one. The second one is agents. And an agent can be understood as a large language model that knows something new or has learned something. So an example would be read all of chemistry, learn something about chemistry, have a bunch of hypotheses about chemistry, run some tests in a lab about chemistry, and then add that to your agent. These agents are going to be really powerful, and it's reasonable to expect that agents will be, not only will there be a lot of them, and I mean millions, but they'll be like the equivalent of GitHub for agents. There'll be lots and lots of agents running around and available to you. And the third one, which to me is the most profound, which is already beginning to happen, is text to action. And what that is write me a piece of software to do something, right? You just say it. Now, can you imagine having programmers that actually do what you say you want? And it does it 24 hours a day. And strangely, these systems are good at writing code such as language like Python. You put all that together, and you've got infinite context window, the ability for agents, and then the ability to do this programming. Now, this is very interesting. What then happens? There's a lot of questions here, and now we get into the questions of science fiction. I'm sure the 3 things I've named are happening because that work is happening now. But at some point, these systems will get powerful enough that you'll be able to take the agents and they'll start to work together. At some point, people believe that these agents will develop their own language. And that's the point when we don't understand what we're doing. You know what we should do? Pull the plug.